The Fancounters Celebrity Podcast, number 161. Coming to you from nowhere near the entertainment capital of the world, this is the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast.
You were like the carrot top of interviewers.
Wow, how disappointing was that question?
You did not just ask me that.
Well, that's a big question.
Never mind, I'm done. I'm not doing the show.
Wow, I can't believe it.
I'm telling you, I'm hooked.
Nick.
Yeah, he's so awesome. He's so a good friend of mine.
Welcome to the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast. My name's Nick.
And I'm Tracy.
And you can follow us on social media. If you go to Instagram, we're at Fancounters Live. We have a big Facebook group if you follow Fancounters on Facebook. And the little tiny group is called Sharpie Nation. So you can search for that on Facebook as well. And if you want to email us, you can send us a message to hello@fancounters.com. So Tracy, do you have Sirius XM?
I do.
You do? Do you like it?
I do. I have it on in my vehicle, and I have it in my van, and I have it on my Harley.
Well, they mail me letters all the time saying, you should sign up for our service. We've got this great plan where you don't have to pay for so many months, and then, it's this much after that.
Right.
I fell for one of those and signed up. But it was online streaming only, so it wasn't designed for a vehicle. It was just like I could stream it on my phone.
Okay.
Which was fine.
Or you could stream it in your house.
Yes.
Okay.
Except I didn't know how to log in, ever, for the whole entire trial period.
Didn't you have a login and a password?
Probably. I don't remember what it was, and when I tried to reset it, that wouldn't send me the email, and it just wasn't worth my time because it was free until it wasn't.
Until they started charging you, right?
Then they charged me the $15 a month or something. So I finally went online, and I decided to cancel. And, you can't talk to anybody anymore, so I was chatting with the representative. And this is what I find very funny. They said, thanks for being a loyal customer. We really hate to lose you. We do have another option for you, which is $8 a month instead of the $15 a month.
Okay.
But at the time, I'm like, I have never logged into this thing. I don't even know if I continued to pay $8 a month how to log into this thing. It was more trouble than it was worth. And I said, no, I'm going to cancel. Okay?
Okay.
So then she comes back with, well, I can still go ahead and cancel your subscription if that's what you wish. But I'd like to advise you that you may be subject to a $15 reactivation fee if you choose to come back in the future. So basically what they said is, we'd really hate to lose you as a customer, but if we do, screw you. We're going to charge you big time just to come back.
Well, you know what you do then?
What?
Is you wait for those offers to come in mail and that says, hey, have Sirius XM for 4 months free.
Right.
And sign up again.
Yep. But it's just the customer service. I'm like, are you kidding me? You're going to beg me to stay? And now, well, if you want to come back, you're going to have to pay big time.
I find that not only in Sirius XM, but I find that with cable companies and cell phone carriers and the whole bit. Their customer service is usually terrible.
Not good. Our customer service is wonderful.
Absolutely.
If you mail us, we'll mail you back. And if you tell us a guest to get on the show and we get them, you can be on the show too.
Kind of like the movie Field of Dreams. If you send it, we will respond.
Yes, exactly. Today on the show, we've got the daughter of a Oscar-winning actor. Carla Malden is joining us today. She is the daughter of Karl Malden, the amazingly famous character actor. Did you know he got an Oscar for his performance in A Streetcar Named Desire?
I did.
Oh, well, then you know more than me.
I'm older than you, too.
And you also know that he was on a television show that I didn't know anything about?
The Streets of San Francisco.
Yeah, over 100 episodes.
Do you know who else was in that show with him? Michael Douglas.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, we should ask her about any encounters she might have had with him.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
If she was on set. I don't know. That's one of my questions today.
Is it?
Yep.
Cool.
So we're going to find out what it's like to have a famous father, to grow up kind of in the spotlight. Now, Carl's been very famous for being very loyal to his family, being a family man. Like when he gets home, he makes sure he spends all that time with them. So that's kind of a cool thing. But we have a lot of great questions for Carla. She's got a brand new book out. It's called Shine Until Tomorrow. It just came out this week. So anywhere where books are sold, please go get this book. It's a book written about a young girl who time travels back to the 60s.
You know what's significant about the year that she time traveled to, don't you?
No.
That was the year I was born.
Aww. And if you want to know what year that is, you'll have to get the book Shine Until Tomorrow with Carla Malden, who is our wonderful guest today. Carla Malden, welcome to Fancounters. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. Now, I want to start this interview talking about some real-life experiences that you have had, because I started this podcast so I could kind of get to know the real side of celebrity. And I know that your dad was not only an amazingly famous actor, he was a family man. I read that so many times while doing the research, and I'm sure you're going to tell me the same thing. But having a famous father was probably just something you were used to, but I really want to know, what was it like growing up with a famous parent?
Well, it's an interesting question. He was not crazy famous until I was sort of a little older when he did the television show. I mean, when I was a little girl, he was, a working character actor. He was an Academy Award winner and all of that. But you're right. It's what you're used to, and you don't know any differently. So it's just your normal life. And yes, you were also more than right about his being first and foremost a family man. He was not someone who went to parties. He was all about the family. But in the broader sense, in hindsight, as an adult now, I do look back and think that one of the real privileges of that situation was the people that we had in our home. That kind of spoiled me yep. You mean I'm not going to have Marlon Brando and Sean Connery around the dinner table? Not only do I mean that because they were famous, which is fun, but because of just a lot of really fascinating people. I think that, as I said, in retrospect, is really the big plus. Were the just wonderful, lovely, warm, fascinating people who were the people he worked with, who became his friends.
I just want to make sure I'm following along. You did or didn't have those kind of experiences with other famous actors?
No, I did as a child, but I'm saying it kind of spoils you for adult life. Where am I fascinating for friends? That's fascinating.
Exactly.
Not that I don't
okay.
have lovely friends, but it's the sort of amped up kind of people around the dinner table that was really extraordinary.
Yeah, there's not a lot of people that can say, yeah, I had Marlon Brando or Sean Connery over for dinner. I mean,
that's
no
kidding, hey?
Pretty awesome.
Right, exactly. So that was the upside that was special. The rest of it, he went to work as a child. I rarely, if ever, went to the set with him. That's what he did. He came home. If he was working in town, he came home and tried to be home for dinner, if possible. If he was on location, unlike the way things are with actors now and their children, we really never went with him. We went with him once when it coincided with a lovely trip to Europe over summer vacation, but we were not dragged from location to location. My mother stayed home with us. We stayed in school. It was very normal.
Wow.
So when you said you got dragged along one time, was that for a movie role?
That he was in, yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
We went. It just happened to coincide with summer vacation, so we were able to go with him that one time.
Wow, what a perfect opportunity to take for summer vacation, hey?
Yep, very lovely.
Your dad appeared...
Not a great movie, but it was fun.
Well, it's an experience. Karl appeared on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson 4 times. And what was that like for you to know that he was going to tape that show, which I feel like is kind of the epitome of or the height of somebody being a star is when you get to walk on that stage. Did you guys gather around the television that night to watch it? Do you remember those experiences of him being on?
I remember going with him to the taping one time.
I want to hear that.
You surprise me when you tell me it was 4 times. I would have thought it was maybe 1 or 2. So I lost track of a couple of those. Yeah, it was fun. Actually, if I'll share a story with you, the sort of more legendary appearance, I guess, included his walking out with the fedora. I guess it's a fedora hat on. What do you call those hats that men used to wear then? That my dad always used to wear in the American Express commercials and often in the TV show Streets of San Francisco. And he walked out with that, and he was going to, because Johnny Carson at that point was always making fun of my dad and his nose. There were a lot of Karl Malden nose jokes at that point in time. So I actually said, why don't you have a phony nose made and wear it over your nose, and then when you sit down with Johnny, you take it off and put it on him. And that's what he did, and that was pretty hilarious.
Oh, awesome.
That's great.
It was great. And the hat, of course. He put the hat on Johnny as well, and Johnny just went to pieces. He did that great thing that's the image you have of Johnny Carson in your mind cracking up, where he kind of pushed away from the desk and just doubled over with laughter.
Yeah.
You know, it was great.
I can still picture that.
So your mom and dad were married for 70 years, which is reported as the third longest marriage in Hollywood history. What do you think was Karl and Mona's secret for a successful marriage?
Well, I wrote my father's autobiography with him, which was really one of the great privileges and joys of my life. And he would have said, because he did say this in the book, that the secret was marrying the right girl. So that's what he thought. I think they probably each would have given the other full credit, which is kind of lovely. But I think, talking about how we didn't go on locations with him. They had sort of this clear kind of division of duty, for lack of a better phrase, that is kind of a throwback now, but it worked for our family. My mother stayed home with us. My father traveled as needed. Mostly they just loved each other. They were kind of perfect together, and they were very focused on my sister and me. And beyond that, I guess there's a certain amount of luck and a certain amount of coming up through major struggling times. I'll tell you another funny little anecdote.
Please.
They were married on December 18th, which was their anniversary. And Christmas of that year, they lived in New York. My mother was an actress as well at that point. And I don't think my father had any work yet. He was, pounding the pavements of Broadway. And on December 25th, Christmas, 1 week after they had gotten married, they had 38 cents between them. And they had their Christmas dinner was sharing a chock full of nuts, hot dog, and cup of coffee. So I bring that up in answer to, as a sort of polar route answer to that question, in that they struggled and survived that, and everything else after that was just magnificent, beyond their wildest dreams.
That's pretty cool.
They were always grateful and appreciative.
That's pretty neat. I found it interesting that your mom was an actress as well, and that she gave up her career to pursue any more acting, it appears, to raise a family. And I thought that was pretty neat.
That's true. That's true. And that worked for them. Again, it feels, all of that kind of feels like a throwback to say that now, but that's what made her happy, and that's what she wanted to do. And she actually sort of didn't quite have thick enough skin for the rejection involved in being an actress, too, I think. Though I'm told she was fabulous. I never got to see her act, but I would have loved to.
Carla, I've got one more question I want to get in before we talk about the new book, Shine Until Tomorrow. And that question centers around fan experiences. On Fancounters, we always want to know about our guests' encounters with fans. But what encounters might you have witnessed with your dad, or maybe you've had some of your own? Do any fan interactions stand out in your mind as something you won't forget?
As a writer, my quote-unquote fan interactions usually come in the form of emails or mail, and there are several I won't forget. One of the books I published was a memoir called Afterimage that dealt with the last year of my first husband's life and my first year without him. I sort of transitioned to widowhood. And I received a lot of really extraordinary mail after that was released from people whom it had helped, which was not really even my intention. It was a wonderful collateral side effect. And so that was really heartwarming and gratifying. And I still occasionally will get one of those. In terms of witnessing fan interactions with my dad, that, as I alluded to, really kind of took off when he was doing the TV series. He always used to say, when he was an actor in the movies, he was a character actor, he was not a leading man, and people would recognize him, but they would say, "Oh, didn't you work in the bank in Peoria?" Were we on the basketball team in middle school, or that kind of thing,
Okay.
But then more and more, when he started doing the TV series and you're in people's homes on a weekly basis, he was recognizable as himself. And I just remember once being in New Orleans with him when the series was sort of at its height, and unlike Los Angeles, where people are a little more accustomed to seeing celebrities, he was he really stood out there, and feeling a little weird about the number of people constantly coming up to him as we moved down the street. And he was always very cordial, but he would say to me, just keep walking, like move through this crowd, like a shark through water.
Yeah.
You talk about the show Streets of San Francisco that Karl was on. That was a staple every week in my house when I was growing up. We watched that all 5 seasons.
Thursday night, right? I think Thursday night.
Is that when it was, Thursday nights?
Yep.
We used to watch it all the time. Love that show.
It was a good show. To the best of my knowledge, and I haven't double-checked this, but if memory serves, it was the first TV series to be shot entirely on location.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which was interesting because it ran for 5 years, and the first season they went back and forth. They did exteriors in San Francisco and interiors in Los Angeles, and that just became too grueling on the cast and crew, so they moved everything up to San Francisco.
That's pretty cool.
Now, this week you released your book. We've said it a couple times. It's called Shine Until Tomorrow, and it's actually more of a storybook for, I guess, do you call it for young adults? Is that the target market?
That is the target market. We're calling it a young adult novel, though my hope is that it has resonance with older readers as well.
I think it did, because Tracy and I both read the book. Thanks to your publicist for giving that to us ahead of time so we could know more about it before we talk to you. And I enjoyed it very much. I think the way that you describe different situations that this young girl is facing and seeing, you just have a way with words that seems so easy to read. It's a very fast read, I think.
Oh, well, thank you. That's a compliment. We want it to be fast instead of homework.
Yeah. How nervous do you get leading up to a book's release, and how obsessed with the numbers do you get after you release a book?
I am not at all obsessed with the numbers. That's of little importance to me. Of course, you want to reach as wide an audience as possible, but I don't dwell on that. I don't even ask the publisher for them very frequently at all.
Okay.
And in terms of getting nervous, I don't get nervous before the release. This has been a very strange year to be releasing books. I actually released a grown-up novel called Search Heartache last January, and then this one this January. And my PR for the other one was aborted because of the pandemic, and now this one isn't even having a running start at real-world PR. So I'm going to have had 2 books released during this sort of virtual PR time, which makes it a little less nerve-wracking in a way, because I do get nervous. I am not someone who likes to appear in front of people. I've gotten way better at that, and I look forward to it now, but there's also a nervous edge. So now doing everything virtually is a little more relaxing, even though it's also extremely frustrating not to be able to meet people one-on-one.
Yeah, you're not doing the book signings, the book tour, or anything like that. This is all very new digital aspects of getting it out there.
Correct.
What's your writing process like? Are you a writer that locks themselves away for days on end, or is this something that you kind of do as not really a hobby, because we know it's more than that, but like before you go to bed, I'm going to write for an hour and I sit in bed and I type on the laptop? What's your process? It's
neither one of those, and probably between the two.
Okay.
It depends on what stage of a project I'm in. What's been frustrating about the pandemic and my not going anywhere is it's kind of short-circuited what I think of as my percolating process. I do well. I'm an LA girl. I do well when I'm driving to be thinking about something and just sort of in the back burner of my brain, a little more the back of the right brain. Or if I'm, cruising the aisles of the grocery store or taking a dance class or whatever, it's part of my process. So not to be out in the world as much has actually not been good for me, even though theoretically being home all the time should be a writer's dream. But I don't assign myself a certain number of hours a day, but once I'm in the groove of writing, that just kind of takes care of itself.
Okay.
So it's, as I said, somewhere between the two things you described. I don't take my laptop to bed. I sit at my desk for the most part. And I'm working on something new right now that I'm really trying to stick to an outline with for kind of the first time. And that's a little bit of a struggle for me in terms of process. I'm a little more freewheeling and then go back into the work and shape it. So this is I'm trying something new right now. But with Shine Until Tomorrow, I really had that story in my head. That was a treat to write. I wasn't struggling with plot. I knew exactly what the spine of that story was.
So with that, when you say that, what was the inspiration for it?
Well, just so your listeners know, it's about a teenage girl who, it's kind of a time travel piece, or is it just a bump on the head Wizard of Oz thing? That's up for grabs. But it's about a teenage girl who goes back in time to 1967, San Francisco, the Summer of Love. And the theme, as I think of it, which was kind of the inspiration for what I wanted to say in the story, is that sometimes a person can be so obsessed and focused on their future that they have to go back to the past to learn to live in the present. So that's kind of the log line. And that was the thematic thrust that I had. And then in terms of the story, I just have always been fascinated with the Summer of Love in San Francisco. It's something I never saw personally, but it's just a time period and a culture and a music and a kind of sociological phenomenon that I just love. So that was the natural place to put it, and of course that was the best place for her to learn that lesson about being present in the moment.
What was cool, Nick and Carla, was the fact that the year that she went back in time in the book was the year that I was born.
1967.
Oh, wow.
Yep, so that was pretty cool.
Wow.
You should ask your question. Why?
Oh, yeah. So what made you go back to 1967? What was the was there something key in that year that you thought was unique?
Well, they as you probably know, it was called the Summer of Love in San Francisco,
right,
when there was this great influx of kids into the city, and kind of the high watermark for the counterculture and hippiedom and all of that. So it just was the perfect moment for her to learn the lesson of the book,
okay,
which has to do with being present in the moment and opening your heart. She's at the beginning sort of a snarky, focused on getting into college, a little more rigid, and keeps herself isolated from her peers or condescending towards her peers as kind of a self-defense for her insecurities. And to me, the Summer of Love in 1967 was just the ideal place to turn all those things on their head for her.
The book starts in the 2000s, so I'm wondering, how hard was it to write for a teenage girl growing up in that decade as a woman, of course we're talking about you, who grew up in the 60s?
It was really not hard at all. I kind of have a soft spot in my heart for coming-of-age stories about teenage girls. I don't know if that means I feel like I never grew out of being one. I think in some respects it does. And I have a daughter who's now past teenagerhood, but was a teenager during those times of the 2000s. So I know girls like that. I knew that age, and I think the heart of a 17-year-old girl doesn't change much from decade to decade.
I'm going to take your word for that. I only have 8-year-old twin daughters right now, so we're not there yet.
Oh my goodness!
But I know I'm in for
and
a
you're
shocker.
Awake.
Yes, I am.
I have a daughter who's 22, so I kind of
You just went through it.
I kind of just went through it, but yeah, I don't want to go through it again.
I found it funny in the book that Mari took so long to figure out that she was in a different time period, which I thought, this is so unusual. I'm reading this and reading and reading and reading. And then you actually mention it, that she's like, oh, I guess I should have figured this out sooner. So there is a little bit of self-awareness that she progresses through as she goes, through this journey. Is there a reason, because as a reader, I felt like that she would have noticed it right away.
Well, I wanted the reader to probably figure it out before she did, and to me, it reinforced the theme that I was discussing of her really not being present in the moment. she's a girl who lives so much in her own head and trying to keep a wall around her so fiercely that she's not present in the moment. So we, as the reader, are in the moment observing her, and we'd say, oh, well, there's a clue.
Yeah.
There's another clue. Yeah. There's another clue. But she's not really present in the moment in the way that we can see the moment evolving. So that's why I did it that way.
It's very cool. And I'm also always wondering with authors, how do you come up with names for your book? Do you use internet random name generators, or do they come from somewhere?
Oh, you mean with names for the characters or for the title of the book?
No, the name for the character.
Characters. Mm-hmm. I always like them to mean something. The reader doesn't have to know what it is, but it has to mean something to me. So, as I just said, her name is Mari, Mari, pronounced like Mari in tomorrow, which echoes the title, Shine Until Tomorrow, which of course comes from a Beatles song, happily appropriated from Let It Be. And it's about time, and it's about being in the moment in whatever time you find yourself. So her focus at the beginning of the book is very much on her tomorrow, on her getting to Yale, with which she's obsessed. So it just worked for me in that way.
So doing a book about time travel had to be really cool to do, but I bet it could be time-consuming. How much research did you need to do to stay true to the time period, and how long did it take you to write the book?
I did a fair amount of research. I'm sitting in my office right now, and above me is the shelf of books that was dedicated to that project. So I see in front of me a book called Hippie, a book called 1967, a book called Summer of Love, another one, The Me Generation. So I did a fair amount of research, for some details. Yes, I wanted very specific details. A lot of the description of San Francisco, of the Haight-Ashbury district, is correct. I've got the kind of car that Janis Joplin drove. I've got the name of the hamburger joint. I've got and the sign in the window, all that kind of thing. But a lot of it, as I was writing, was just visual. I just kept looking at pictures to just sort of steep myself in the look of the time, because there are several passages that just kind of describe the general look and feel of the Haight-Ashbury area that I wanted to capture.
Carla, how much did you edit out of the book? And was what was edited out by choice, or did the editor suggest you to cut some of your favorite parts?
Happily not. I really wanted it to be fairly lean going in, so there really were not any substantive changes after that. And a paragraph here and there that was just a little excessive with description, maybe, that didn't move the story forward. But I had a pretty clear vision of how streamlined I wanted it to be.
Excellent. Before we close out a segment on this book, I've got a couple questions about some of your other work and then some fun ones to end the interview. Where's the best place to get the book? Like, as an author who's kind of releasing, is there one place better that benefits the author more than another to get the book?
Oh, what an interesting question, and I don't know the answer to that. I normally, under normal non-COVID times, would say, please support your independent bookstore, because that's just something I believe in. But we can't really. I guess if your listeners have relationships with independent bookstores and they could call them and order one and have it sent, that would be delightful. Beyond that, I'm going to resort to Amazon.
Let's talk a little bit about the book that you wrote with your father, Karl Malden. It's called When Do I Start? It had to be kind of an interesting relationship growth thing for you to experience with your dad. You probably heard a lot of stories you didn't know. How many times did you say during that process, are you kidding? Did that really happen? Did you have to question him on, why did I not know that?
There were most of those had to do with his younger life, obviously, his life as a child and growing up. And but having known my grandparents, they were all consistent with my image of what that life would have been. But yes, it was a really fascinating experience. It took us about 2 to 3 years, I think, and I would go over to his house about 4 or 5 times a week with my laptop. There I had the laptop, and just talk to him and have him tell me stories. and then I would bring it home and, reread it and organize it into some sort of semblance of something coherent. And then I would go back and kind of like part therapist, part storyteller. I would ask him questions and have him tell me the story again. We did that a lot, and sort of try to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And that was our process, and it was just fabulous. As I said, it was really one of the joys of my life to be able to have that experience with him. Also, then I must say, and know how thrilled he was with how it turned out. So that was wonderful.
Who wanted to write the book more? Was it like your idea? Were you pushing for it, or was he?
He had been approached a couple of times to write a book of the story of his life, and he had sat down a few times and tried to do it himself and realized he couldn't. So he came to me and said, "Would you help me?" And resoundingly, yes.
With your dad being in show business, one might expect you to pursue an acting career, but your comfort is actually writing. Did you ever feel pushed to carry on your father's legacy in the entertainment business versus creating a path for yourself outside of that business in writing?
Well, in my younger life, I worked in the business in development, in a little bit in production, and then more in development, which is also obviously behind the scenes, but with story. But no, the easy answer to your question is no. I never wanted to be an actress. Not for me. Though I must say, if I could have gotten over the sort of self-consciousness and all of that, I think I could have done it because I am that person who says no when they're watching a movie. The line should be da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But beyond that, no.
Well,
so I'm an armchair actress.
Speaking of movies, I read somewhere that you see over 100 movies in a year, and I think we're talking the movie theater, right?
Well, we used to be.
I know.
Not this year.
Yeah.
Not this year, sadly. Yes, I like to see movies in the movie theater.
And how do you pick out what you want to see? Do you go off recommendations of friends? Do you just watch trailers? Can you get instantly turned off by a thing and go, I'm never seeing that? How do you pick?
I'm very open to seeing almost anything. There are certain genres that are not my favorites. I'm not a big action movie person. I'm not a big horror movie person, but I'll see them. I'll see them. I just like to go to the movies. It's sort of beyond a hobby. I guess it's kind of a passion. But as I said, not this year. It's all on the TV.
That's right.
Does that mean you're a fan of Hallmark movies?
No.
Okay.
Wait, you weren't watching Hallmark Christmas for the last 2 months? Is that what you're saying?
Nope.
We'll convert you to that yet. I think I've DVR'd all 60 of them. I think there was 20 on Lifetime and 40 on Hallmark. So.
Oh, my goodness.
They're fabulous.
Well,
my wife and I like it.
I'm disappointed that I just finished the 4th season of The Crown. I zipped through that so quickly that now I'm a little...
Now you have to find something else.
7.
Going back to the Beatles, I read in an interview that you did that you don't have a lot of things on your bucket list because one of the main things you had on there you already checked off, and you got to see Paul McCartney live. So tell us about that experience and why did that top your list?
Well, I've actually seen him many, many times live. But what was extraordinary about the time you're talking about was I got to see him in Liverpool live.
That's cool.
Which was, that was definitely a bucket list moment.
That's amazing.
I got married 6 years ago, and the year after that, we sort of took a belated honeymoon, and we were planning our itinerary to England and Scotland and Ireland, and I read that Paul McCartney was going to be playing in Liverpool, so we kind of rejiggered our itinerary a little bit to be able to do that, and it was amazing.
That's pretty cool. Did you ever see the Beatles together?
Third row.
Third row, too.
Third row center.
Wow.
I never saw the Beatles. No, I didn't.
Okay. I was going to say, I won't ask you how much those McCartney tickets were because I did take my aunt, who is a diehard McCartney fan, to see him when he was here in Milwaukee 4 or 5 years ago, and I think the tickets were like $200 and $300 a piece.
And those were nosebleed, right?
They were not good, yeah. We relied on the Jumbotron.
But he puts on a great show, doesn't he?
Oh, yes. Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah. We were live on the Jumbotron.
I bet you were.
Hey Jude, what was your song? Probably Hey Jude also.
Maybe. I just like, I went to see the expression on her face, and that was priceless. You couldn't.
Yeah.
You can't put a price on that. She's turning 75.
Quick anecdote. You can 86 this if you want, but you'll enjoy it. The last time I saw him was in Las Vegas a couple of years ago. I took my daughter and son-in-law, my husband, and we were seated between a man who had never seen him in his life but had adored him always, who burst into tears a grown man burst into tears when Paul walked out.
Wow.
And then on the other side of us was one of those crazy super fans, more so than I, who had seen him 130 times. So that's the gamut there of a Paul McCartney concert.
Now, I don't know. I know we're going off on a tangent. This is terrible. There was a documentary a few years ago about the fact that this Paul McCartney that we're all talking about is not the real Paul McCartney. Do you buy into any of that? That Paul McCartney was really killed in a car accident, and this is the fall McCartney that they talk about?
Absolutely not. Rubbish, as the British would say.
I can't believe that is even
It made a great movie.
Thing.
It did make a good documentary.
I can imagine.
So the best place to find your website is karlmalden.com, and that is where you can find more information about the book Shine Until Tomorrow, which you've listed again. We talked about this before. It's a young adult novel, but I think it's perfect. It's such a fast read that anybody who enjoys dramatic movies and that sort of thing would enjoy it. My final question for you, Carla, is do you see movies being made out of some of the books that you've written? Because they are quite touching and would make for good films.
Thank you. Yes, I do. Particularly this one.
That's what I thought.
Particularly the young adult one, I think had enormous cinematic potential, and I look forward to that.
Excellent.
And this book is perfect for my stepdaughters because they're all young adults.
Pick it up.
Oh, please.
Yep, absolutely.
Let me know how they like it.
I will do that.
Carla, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today. We enjoyed learning more about the book and, of course, your father.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you both so very much.
Our thanks to Karla Malden for joining us on the show this week. Tracy, you let me down.
Why?
You didn't ask about Michael Douglas.
It never came up. It was I wanted to, but it just wasn't appropriate in the conversation we were having. So It kind of got off on other stuff, and I didn't get an opportunity to ask it.
I just hate mentioning things in the opening and be like, yeah, we're going to talk about this and this and this, and then we never get to any of it.
Well, it was a good conversation.
I thought I should at least address that. Yeah. We forgot it.
It was a good conversation, though. I mean, she went places that we actually weren't planning on going either with the stuff, so that was cool.
Very true. The book is called Shine Until Tomorrow. Karla Malden is the author, and you can get it right now on Amazon. It just came out this week. And you know the most important time to buy a book is the week it's released. So help her out, put her on the New York Times bestseller list, any bestseller list, and get this book, Shine Until Tomorrow. Thanks again, Carla, for joining us. And Tracy, that's going to do it for this week.
You bet, man.
We have another celebrity guest coming up next week on the show, and we want you to come back.
I think that's a great idea. Everybody should come back.
and email us at hello@fancounters.com. We love to hear your feedback, and the best way you can support the show is to go to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review. Say some nice words about me, and if you want to talk about how you don't appreciate Tracy being on the show.
Hey,
I'm
now.
okay with that. No, I really appreciate Tracy coming out for these shows and, picking up a co-host spot here.
Absolutely. I'm very honored. Glad to be part of it.
That will do it for this week. Come back next week, next Friday. Every Friday we release a brand new episode, and we will see you then. That's when you say goodbye.
Bye-bye.